Right. So this is unit 2 that we're going into tonight. Module 5 of unit 2. They have been broken out into different units within the modules on this one. All right, infrastructure management, solutions and controls. This includes general management concepts and controls that apply to the cloud, virtualization, identity and access management, certificate management, and networking. General concepts, active defense, used to raise the cost for the attacker in terms of wasted times and processing power. So that's when you throw extra things in there like encryption, deception, requires strict monitoring and logging when you do deception. So on deception, something like those honeypots and honey nets would be part of that. And the reason they're saying strict monitoring and logging is because you don't know if those deceptions are working if you don't monitor them. Change and asset management. Change management.
I had a quick thing. So when I was reading through the chapter on active defense, like I don't know why it was, but every time I saw the words active defense, the old Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie, I just kept seeing the giant war machine threat engage, and it was saying in that deep voice, engaging threat. And it was just, something I thought I'd throw out there.
Engaging threat. It's kind of like that. Enhance. Yes, I totally get that. So sometimes I think that they throw those in there just to sound more important. And that's kind of one of those. Schrodinger's honeypot. I absolutely love that. Yes, that's what happens if you don't actually monitor them. Is it active? Is it working? I don't know. And as a side note, I have a stuffed cat that is the Schrodinger's cat. On one side, it looks normal, and you flip it over, and it's got little X's for its eyes. I thought it was funny. So, change and asset management. So change management, the formal process of making modifications to a system and keeping track of the modifications. I cannot tell you how many places do not do this. If you don't keep track of the modifications and someone else comes in after you and they look at the old thing and they're like, oh, I need to do XYZ. And they're like, but this isn't here. And then they panic. So make sure you actually do change management. Change control stipulates the process to follow when implementing system changes. Asset management, this one makes my eyelid twitch, and I'll tell you why. Provides guidelines and practices that govern decisions about how assets should be acquired, maintained, and disposed. Asset tagging, affixing physical tags to hardware and creating an approved listing of software that can be installed. I have gotten to see what happens when you do asset management wrong on several occasions. So make sure wherever you are, if you have to do anything with asset management, that you are aware of how your company does asset management. You are aware of all the steps for your asset management. And if there are any gaps, that you stand up and say that there's a gap. I think there's a gap. This is what we really should do to fix it. If they don't listen to you, that's fine. But then you have it on the record. I told you that there was a problem and it should have been fixed. That way, if something happens later, they can't be like, well, why didn't you ever tell us about this? Because I've seen that happen more times than I care to admit.
I kind of got a story on that, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I might have told this one before, but we had a guy at the service desk who decided that he wanted to go down to San Francisco and visit his family down there. He took both work laptops with him, stored them in his car, drove down there, went to Chinatown and parked his car, and it got stolen with both laptops in there. So from there, they had to prove, okay, did he have permission or did he not have permission to take those laptops down there with him? And ultimately, they were able to prove that he wasn't given permission because there was nothing in writing that says that he was denied permission. So now they have a policy where you have to request written permission from your manager to take the equipment home.
Yes, and this is exactly how policies like that are created. It's like when you see those warning labels with "Do not stand in tub with hair dryer." There's someone out there that actually did it, or else that label would not be there. So people like that exist, and unfortunately, asset management and asset tagging is one of those areas where it's really easy for people to do dumb stuff. Okay, cloud controls. Cloud versus on-prem. Significant differences exist between securing resources in corporate data centers and securing data held and processed in the cloud. Some controls are packaged as cloud native controls, and others are available as third-party solutions. One thing to remember with cloud, if you are getting a third-party solution, you also have to check their contracts, what all they require to get into. It's just kind of like when you look at your phone and you download something and you look at the permissions. It's the same kind of thing with stuff like this. How much do they actually need access to? Is that a good idea? So remember that when you talk about anything third party when it comes to cloud. Securing cloud controls, conducting audits, independent examination of cloud service controls, utilizing regions and zones, reliability and resilience achieved by duplicating processes across one or more geographical area, enforcing functional area mitigations, storage, network, and compute, managing implement secrets, enabling strong security and improved management of a microservice-based architecture. Cloud Access Security Broker, or CASB, set of software tools or services that resides between an enterprise's on-prem infrastructure and the cloud provider's infrastructure. Ensures that the security policies of the enterprise extend to its data in the cloud. And that's very important because if they don't match, you have problems with, yes, we thought our data was covered and we thought everything was according to like say HIPAA. I mean, that's worst case scenario, but our cloud stuff was not the same and we had no idea. So, always make sure you're informed. Secrets management feature. Okay, so we got the feature on the left and then the description. So limited and automated replication. While secret data and secret names are, quote, protected global resources, the secret data is stored in regions, which the user can specify or the cloud provider can designate. Secret specific versioning. A secret can be pinned to a specific version of the code, like your when they put the v3.2 on there. Audit logging. Every interaction generates an audit entry in a log file that can be used to find abnormal access patterns that may indicate possible security breaches. I cannot stress that you need to turn on audit logging enough. You have no way to prove the chain of events if you do not have audit logging. Default encryption. Data is encrypted in transit and at rest with AES 256-bit encryption keys. There's actually some of them now that you'll see AES 512 as well. They're just more expensive. Extensibility. The system is able to extend and integrate into other existing secret management systems. Virtualization. Means of managing and presenting computer resources by function without regard to their physical layout or location. Host virtualization. Simulation of an entire operating system using a virtual machine. Virtual machine, software-based emulation of a computer. Host system runs a VM monitor program called a hypervisor. A container, reduced version of virtualization. Containerization. Necessary OS components can be easily moved from one computer to another. Okay, so this is their explanation here. So you have your hardware, your host operating system, and then you have your container engine, and then you see your container has your binary libraries, and then your applications on top of that. Virtualization. Virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI, process of running a user desktop inside of a VM that resides on a server. Enables personalized desktops for each user to be available on any computer or device with access to the server. Security-related advantages. Latest security updates can be downloaded and run in a VM to determine compatibility. A snapshot of a state of a VM can be saved for later use. Security control testing can be conducted using a simulated network environment on a computer using multiple VMs. VMs can promote security segregation and isolation. VMs can be used to test for potential malware. Now, one thing, if you do like the VDI, my previous place of employment, we were talking about doing this. I'm not sure if they implemented it, but they were talking about doing this for people who had much, much higher clearances. Like for example, I was in there's like the top 3 of us that had the most security accounts. And they were worried about, well, what happens if someone gains physical access to your computer? And so they were thinking, well, what if we just give you a generic account to log into your computer, and then we put everything on this VM, and then when you go into the VM, you log in with your other account. It was an interesting concept, but we didn't actually get a chance to see how it worked. Security concerns for virtualized environments. Not all hypervisors have the necessary security controls to keep out determined attackers. Traditional security tools are designed for single physical servers and do not always adapt well to multiple VMs. VMs must be protected from both outside networks and other VMs on the same physical computer. VMs may be able to, quote, escape from the contained environment and directly interact with the host operating system. Virtual machine sprawl. So remember we talking about scope sprawl? This is the same thing, just with VMs. Widespread proliferation of VMs without proper oversight or management. I saw this a lot. It happened and they're like, well, what is this? And everyone was like, I don't know, because it was something that was opened by a former employee and nobody really knew what it was. So this happens a lot with virtual machines. Best practices for securing a container. Always manage container-based processes using non-privileged user accounts. Use trusted images to create a container because a compromised image can easily circumvent existing security measures, obviously. Use tools such as security enhanced Linux to harden the hosts. Yes, best process padlock. Yeah, pretty much. Identity and access management. Various products, processes, and policies used in managing a user's identity and regulating access to resources. Primary elements. Database containing user's identity and access privileges. Tools used by a system administrator for creating, monitoring, modifying, and deleting access privileges. System used to audit user logins and access history. Multi-factor authentication. IAM requires the presentation of more than one authentication credential, which is very, very nice. Authentication credentials, a minimum of 7 elements can be presented to the IT systems for the purpose of verification. Factors, 3 elements, attributes, 4 elements. Single-factor authentication, using 1 type of authentication. 2-factor authentication, using 2 types of authentication. Single sign-on, and I'll tell you right now, I've seen some trickily worded questions on certification exams where they have MFA and 2FA, and they're like, is this MFA or is this 2FA? And it's read the questions very carefully. If it's only 2 types, no more, 2-factor. If it's more than 2, it's kind of one of those, if it's a group, it's 3 or more, that's what they're actually aiming for. Single sign-on, or SSO, 1 authentication credential that accesses multiple accounts or applications and can be shared across multiple networks. Federation, networks used by different organizations. Current technologies for federation systems. OAuth, open authorization. Open source federation framework. Supports the development of authorization protocols. OpenID, open standard decentralized authentication protocol, can be used in OAuth 2.0 as a standard means to obtain user identity. I'm probably going to murder this pronunciation. Shibboleth, open source software packaging for designing SSO, uses federation standards to provide SSO and exchanging attributes. And we're going to go right past that one for now. Access control schemes. Framework embedded in software and hardware that simplifies assigning privileges to users used by system administrators. Facilitates easier manual reviews of privileges. Matching users with human resources or HR data, reviewing current privileges, identifying new personnel, and encouraging existing users to complete their access reviews. Part of privileged management, technologies and strategies for controlling elevated privileged access and permissions. Common types, mandatory access control, role-based access control, attribute-based access control. And then we'll go into those. Did someone have a question? MAC assigns users access controls strictly based on the data custodian's desires. Most restrictive scheme, key elements, labels and levels. Labels represent the relative importance of the object. Levels, hierarchy based on labels for objects and subjects. RBAC assigns permissions to particular roles in the organization, then assigns users to those roles. Considered a more real-world access control than other schemes. That's the one I'm the most familiar with because people really like to use that one. However, if you have gone from not using anything like that to RBAC and you have to work with a human resources department that does not have a centralized job descriptions or job functions thing, it can be very difficult when you first start setting things up. ABAC uses flexible policies that can combine attributes. Rules can be formatted using if then else structure, most flexible scheme. Certificate management, cryptography, hidden writing, Greek practice of scrambling information. Okay, so I don't know if any of you heard of these stories, but some historical examples are the ciphers they used to use, where they would do alphabetical ciphers. They would just shift like so many letters, like for example, 6 letters to the right, and like A became 6. You go 6 letters forward, and then they would write that way. And as long as you knew, okay, I need to shift everything 6 letters forward, this is how I do that. So that's an example of your very, very early cryptography. Encryption is the process of changing original text into a scrambled message. Asymmetric cryptography, which we've gone over a couple times, uses a public key that can be shared with anyone and a corresponding private key that is kept confidential by the owner. Used to encrypt or decrypt data, used to verify the signature of the sender. Digital certificate, used to associate a user's identity to a public key that has been digitally signed by a trusted third party. The third party verifies the owner and that the public key belongs to that owner. Entities of certificate management. There's certificate repositories and means for certificate revocation. A CR or certificate repository, publicly accessible centralized directory of digital certificates that can be used to view the status of a digital certificate. Which book are you talking about? Are you talking about the Cengage? Little Brother, yeah. Sometimes textbooks, because they're written by people who put it up here instead of down here, Some people are just better at explaining things. So asymmetric, if you can get it dumbed down into small and then work back up, I think it's much easier to explain. Certificate revocation, assessed by one of two means. Certificate revocation list. This is a list comprising revoked certificates, serial numbers, online certificate status protocol, real-time lookup of a certificate status, OSCP stapling. This is just a variation of OSCP. So this is what that looks like. So step one, I would like to connect. Step two, is this certificate valid? Go out and look at your OCSP. Step three, yes, here it is. Step four, okay, here you go. Everyone following so far? All right. Network architecture. Traditional method involves the use of physical networks. More control features are available for virtual networks. Network architecture controls, software-defined networks, virtual private networks, and virtual private clouds. Software-defined network virtualizes parts of a physical network, enables quick and easy reconfiguration of the physical network, provides flexibility of a virtual system to the physical network. So when you have an SDN, the reason it's talking about quick and easy reconfiguration, think about trying to move around the parts and components of a physical network and how much, if you've ever done networking, you have considerations like power placement, cabling. Some of these, they just shift to, you just get, here's your overlay, and then you shift the resources virtually around. So it's significantly faster than a physical network. Knowledge check. Which of the following virtualizes parts of a physical network? Okay, this is one of those dartboard questions. If you don't remember what it goes for, it's okay. Just pick one. E! All of the above. Couple more. Taupe, nice. Oh, I love it. Okay, so let's see. SDN, software defined network. Okay, so this is a graphic example of a software defined network in the different planes. So you have your data plane, has your router, your packet switch, network device, other network devices, your LAN switch. Then you have it connected by your protocols. And in your control plane, you have routing and traffic control. Then you have APIs between that, applications over there on the left, like your business and SDN applications. Virtual private network. This enables authorized users to access an unsecured public network as if it were a secured private network. Encrypts all data transmitted between remote endpoint and network. Common types, remote access VPN, site-to-site VPN. Use of VPN may be based on the type of traffic that is being protected. So, and this is something when they're talking about tunneling, full tunnel, split tunnel, I can guarantee you're going to see that on like CEH type stuff. So just make sure you're familiar with it. So a full tunnel protects all traffic. One way that I remember that is end-to-end encryption. If this end's secure and this end's secure, full tunnel. A split tunnel protects specific types of traffic while the rest directly accesses the network. And that's like, okay, I connect here and all this data is connected. And this is the important data that needs to go from here. And okay, this stuff is all encrypted, but the rest of it goes back and forth. That's how you think of a split tunnel. Hopefully that makes sense. Virtual private cloud. Cloud-based service that creates a logical isolated virtual network, helps create a public-facing subnet for web servers that have access to the internet and can be used for back-end systems. Network segmentation, boy, they really drive that one home a lot, involves dividing a network into smaller elements that can help achieve system isolation. physical segmentation using separate networks and infrastructures, virtual segmentation using VMs to separate network functions, jump box, minimally configured administrator server within a demilitarized zone, security feature available in recent years. Only a dedicated secure admin workstation, or SAW, can be used to connect to the jump box. Air gap, we've talked about this several times, completely isolates a crucial network or endpoint from all external sources, including any network connections or external ports, commonly used in manufacturing environments. It's also used in your big 3 letters in military environments if you have something that's super high top security clearance, and if you go near it, you have to have all sorts of different things that you have to sign and people that you have to go. Would a DMZ be a split tunnel? No. A DMZ is more like think of a DMZ more like a wall rather than a tunnel. Okay, which of the following, sorry, that's not an answer. Cat clawing leg. Which of the following would an administrator use to access a server in a DMZ? Air gap, SDN, DNS, jump box. And we just talked about it. Cat. Yeah, that is also an acceptable answer. Yeah, I think everyone's going to get this one. Yeah. Jump box. Yes, I love you. That's hot. Honeypot, common deception instrument. Computer located in an area with limited security that serves as bait to threat actors. The goal, deflect or redirect threat actors' attention away from legit servers, encourages threat actors to spend time and energy on decoy servers. Discover, trick threat actors into revealing their techniques. That is probably my favorite part of honeypots and honey nets. Yes, it's cool that you can get them to spend their time and resources and frustrate the crap out of them on using this stuff on stuff that doesn't matter. But you also get to watch how they're going to attack your network, what types of things they're after, and if you have the ability to trick multiple people in there, you can also start to see attack patterns so that you can see the types of surface area that you need to secure most in your network. It's very, very helpful. Types. Low interaction honeypot. Goodness, she's too helpful tonight. Records only login attempts and provides information on the threat actor's IP address of origin. High interaction honeypot collects information about attack techniques or information that threat actors are seeking. Those are my favorite, but they do require a lot more from your IT personnel. HoneyNet contains 1 or more honeypots. Okay. Which of the following contains honey files and fake telemetry? High interaction honeypot, telemetry honeypot, honeypot net, honey server. Boy, they really threw some stuff in there that don't exist. Couple more. Yeah. I think they made up for the other one with nothing but just letters by throwing some obvious ones in here. Yeah, I really like that honeypot net. I thought that was good. Configuration controls, authorization, permissions, pre-approval to perform an activity can be assigned to file access, user accounts, and other elements. Whitelisting, approving in advance only specific applications to run. Any item not approved is either restricted or denied, and that's called default deny. Blacklisting, or depending on the product you're using, it's called block, BLOCK listing, creating in advance a list of unapproved software or websites. Any item not on the list can run, or websites can be accessed. Now, most of the ones that I've used use both. And some of them have a whitelist, blacklist, and a gray list, which is just these run because we haven't found anything wrong with them yet. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's at least the ones that I've seen. Okay, which of these is a list of pre-approved application? Oh my gosh, really? White list, green list, red list, black list. I think you should know the answer to this. Ow, 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 ow. Remember, pre-approved. Okay, whitelist. Configuration controls hardware, network appliances, firewalls. Limit the spread of malware by examining outgoing and incoming network packets. Parameters of firewall rules. Source address, location of the origination of the packet. Destination address, the address the connection is attempting to reach. Source port, TCP/IP port number being used to send packets of data. Destination port, gives the port on the remote computer or device that the packet will use. Protocol, defines the network protocol being used when sending or receiving packets of data. Direction, direction of traffic for the data packet. Priority, determines the order in which the rule is applied. Something you need to know, a lot of firewalls run in a top-down configuration, and that just means you need to be careful, because if you have conflicting rules, it will go with whichever one comes first. So if you have one that says you need to leave this port open for this to run, and then later on you have, no, this port needs to be blocked, it's going to go with whichever one's up top first. So be aware of that. Time, rules can be set to be in effect only during a scheduled time. So if you say have a third-party service person coming in, or someone remoting in that you know is going to need access to a certain thing for a 24-hour period, you can put in a rule that says, you know, allow remote connections to port blah, blah, blah for 24 hours. Context, a rule that can be created that is unique for specific circumstances. Action indicates the response of the firewall when the conditions of a rule are met. So you can get pretty specific with these. So typical firewall rule action. So you have your action, description, example, and comments. So allow explicitly allows traffic that matches the rule to pass. Permit incoming address resolution protocol traffic. This allows implicitly denies all other traffic unless explicitly allowed. That's not well worded. Bypass allows traffic to bypass the firewall. Bypass based on IP port traffic direction and protocol. Designed for media intensive protocols or traffic from a trusted source. Deny explicitly blocks all traffic that matches the rule. Deny traffic from an IP address. Deny generally drops the packet with no return message to the sender. Forcibly allows traffic that would normally be denied by other rules. Useful for determining if essential network services are able to communicate. Traffic will still be subject to inspection by other security appliances. Log only, logs traffic, but no other action is taken. Bypass rules do not generate log files, but log only will. Log only occurs if the packet is not stopped by a deny rule or an allow rule that excludes it. Configure part 2. Intrusive IPS rules perform the following. So you examine payloads in the session and application layers of the packet, analyze the sequence of the packets according to higher layer protocols. When analyzed traffic matches an IPS rule, the agent handles it as a possible or confirmed attack, and then action is taken based on configuration settings. That's why it's called prevention. not detection. Network access control, NAC, examines the current state of an endpoint before it can connect to a network. Devices that do not meet specified criteria are denied access to the network, granted restricted access to computer resources connected to a quarantine network. It depends on how you have it set. Data loss prevention. Now, this is a big thing. And a lot of places that deal with HIPAA records and things like that, or financial data, have this in place. System of security tools used to recognize and identify data critical to an organization and ensure it is protected. Content inspection, security analysis of the transaction within its approved context. Index matching, documents identified as needing protection are analyzed and complex computations are conducted based on the analysis. Now, I'm going to give you an example. A lot of security suites, you can buy a module that has this, and there are also email, because people can get really dumb with email because it's something you use every day. There are a lot of email filters that now have data loss prevention filters in them. So if you say they have pre-built ones for things like social security numbers and things like that, because they're fairly easily recognized by a system now. But if you have specific numbers or things like that that you want it to scan for, you can do that. And what you can set these for, you can say, okay, if you see this pattern, notify the administrator and put it in quarantine. It's actually pretty cool. Sinkholing steers unwanted traffic away from its intended destination to another device. Deceives threat actors into thinking their attack is successful. NAC, this is your NAC process. So we'll start on 1, security self-assessment by system health agent. 2, statement of health sent to health registration authority. And then you'll see down a little further over by the green there, health certificate issued to client. And 4, health certificate presented to network server. And then 5, if no health certificate, client sent to quarantine. Okay, I think we're at the end here. Yep. All right. Do we have any questions? Everybody burnt out? You understand? You just want to go work on your homework? Okay, sounds like someone just disconnected. All right, so go work on your homework, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.